Hey everybody, welcome to What the Flick. Ben Mankiewicz, Alonso Duralde here to talk about the season 3 finale, Lantern. Oh, and Rhea Seehorn is here.
Hi.
So also, we're
really
it's very exciting for us. and Meredith is in London missing this, and I know she's furious.
So we met at Ileana Douglas's book reading.
Yes.
Right, which was great. And
I'm screaming. I don't know why.
That was Michael Bay will cast you in Transformers 6. Everything in the movie, like people are like, do we have any cornflakes?
That's awesome.
That's what happens in Transformers.
I'm doing that from now
on. But for 3 seasons, even though I think we're friends because we're so we say things to each other on Twitter.
We are friends.
I've been mispronouncing your.
It's fine.
But it's just Ray.
Yes.
Right. All right.
Okay.
Well,
yes.
there you go. All right,
it's like learning vocabulary words only from crosswords and reading, which I do, and then I say them incorrectly because I've never.
Well, look on Turner Classic Movies, it's it's the biggest sort of signal to tell people to call you an idiot when you mispronounce an actor.
Well, for years I thought misled was a word, and then it turned out to be misled.
Totally.
Really?
Yes, you read it, the misled, I thought it was a word.
I said hyperbole well into my 30s. Well into my 30s.
That is the one sports event I will watch.
Doggy dog world.
Doggy dog.
It's a doggy dog world. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know into my 30s, but.
All right. So Lantern, holy shit. Okay, so you survived the car accident, thank goodness. And I love the idea of that you get a blockbuster night because this is a character who's like just
People love the blockbuster reference.
Such a workaholic.
Right. Yes.
So you had it coming. You had earned it by that point. Just like fuck it. I'm gonna sit on the couch.
I got my stack. I talked to Jen Hutchinson, who wrote this episode, and Peter Gould that directed it, and we talked about someone like Kim would apply the same obsessive to-do list about relaxing as she would to her job. So yeah, there's she's trying to figure out how many. Each one takes approximately 2 hours, and. There are much longer outtakes of that involved me trying to figure out which ones are the best pairings, like like a whole film night.
What do you think that was for her? Like because initially you're sort of salvaging, right? You got a couple days. You think you're gonna. So do we think in your head is that a moment that she's deciding I've done this wrong and I can't continue at this pace? Or like what? Because it is an abrupt change, right? Right. For her, I thought, all right, yeah, she goes again. She's going to salvage it in the limp. She's going to fall again or whatever or something. But it's like, or she just decides things.
She's going to fall.
Tripping
was not what happened. No. Crap! I might stumble again.
You're clumsy. No, I just thought like something bad is going to happen.
Right.
And then it's like, no, she just makes this decision. No, I've done this all wrong.
Right.
And now, well.
To my mind, it's a 2-part realization. It's in having to admit to Jimmy, and even though Jimmy is really her only confidant, Kim is pretty loath to look vulnerable. And when she's eating and tells him, "You're not going to feed me,"
right?
Given a beat to think on her own, it comes out. I think what has really bothered her about the accident, which is I could have killed somebody else. I don't even remember. It was lost time, and the way Skip McDonald edited it. That accident as well, I think, was part of how Peter saw it, and
he directed that episode too.
No. That was Minky Spiro, and Minky, who was phenomenal. She and Gordon wrote that one. It was all part of a whole of a discussion that this is the accident was not about gore. The accident was about literally being psychologically lost. How did I get here? In the small sense and the big sense.
Go ahead. One of the great car accidents on screen.
Because
great.
I mean, we talked about this last week.
Right, we talked about it last week.
Because now everybody likes to put the camera in the car and the car flips and it's all too much and just that.
Because you don't even close your eyes.
No, and we see it once before in the episode where she takes a 5-minute nap in the car.
Right, that's right.
Before going into Mesa Verde.
Of course, I forgot about that. Right.
So yeah, it's this idea of time just being lost, and at this point, that's an even bigger sort of comment on Kim. At this point, is how did I get here? This kind of psychological being lost.
I don't want to get away from talking about Kim because I want to talk about Kim, but let's talk a little bit about what happened in 10 before we.
Wait, I just want to say really quickly though, the realization, because there's a lot of people, there's a growing movement on Twitter that thinks she's looking at her calendar from Francesca to figure out if she's pregnant, which confounded me. No. But no, it's exactly what you said. It's doing the blocks of hours and going, okay, so that would leave 2 hours of sleep that day, and this would leave 6 hours of sleep that day. And she gets to, in my mind, the way I played it, she gets to the day that would have been the same day that she traveled, that she just tried to do Gatwood, and realizes no sleep equals you're gonna kill somebody.
You're gonna kill somebody, right.
My thought about the whole episode, as far as the three main intersecting storylines, is this idea of like, what is this worth to me? You know, for Kim, is taking on this other client, doing this extra work worth the physical toll that's taking on me? For Jimmy, is collecting the settlement worth, like ruining this woman's life and ruining her friendships?
Right.
And for Chuck, it's this, is it worth knowing that I've been paid out of the pocket of why am I always
Hamlin.
Is it Hamlin of Howard's pocket to get rid of me?
Interesting.
And so there just seem to be these sort of levels of like, how much am I comfortable with, and then how much is this taking a toll on me?
Right. That's an interesting way to look at it because I hadn't thought about it, but it makes it unusual in that would be one. Maybe the only time we've seen people actually contemplate their consequences.
Sure.
Where it's usually, season 2 was all actions without realizing where this is going to lead, and season 3 has been largely the consequences, the fallout of that stuff. But you're right, this would be an episode where people actually take a moment to think: what could happen if I do this action, and is it worth it?
Yeah. The Chuck's breakdown is one of the most.
It's horrible.
Horrifying scenes I've ever seen in a TV show.
And Michael McKean is such a huge reason of why, and the way it was filmed, Marsh Adams, and the way it was written, and just the time and the pacing they gave him, and there was no doubling. Michael did that for hours and hours and hours. And when you think about hacking through those walls or breaking down something, they flew in another wall and then shot it again. It's take after take after take.
It was like The Conversation and Bill.
Yes.
Oh yes, totally.
Yes, very much so.
The performances on the show, like you get lost because I talk about you all the time, and then
thank God.
Yeah, thank great. Because really the others, but they're all so good. Everybody is so good, and also obviously a real testament to the writing. But everyone is so complicated, and to Alonso's point there before, because both. Charles.
And even Nacho, I think, has a.
No question.
To me.
Yeah, right. What?
I don't want to leave him out.
100%. Michael Mando's lovely at it, and you have to include directors, editors, and a network that allows it, because some of the complexity that is written and they allow us to play with has to do with the stuff that's between the lines and off the lines. And these days, forever in television, it can sometimes come down to chop, 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 close-ups. What's the beat here? What's the line? And they allow this sort of
you guys
real texture.
Another show we talk about a lot and do, The Americans. The big stuff happened in episode 9 and episode 10, but you could argue through 8 episodes, very little went on, right? These are lawyers talking about their cases. If you just, there was a hearing, right?
But brothers taking duct tape
off the wall, right? Will he or will he not? Does he? Is there or is there not a second tape? Like that is not television drama.
Somebody on Twitter was like, "Aren't you so frustrated? They still haven't explained where Chuck's whole electrophobia come from." I'm like, no, I don't care. Like that's not what this character's about.
And I think that comes from. It all comes from, I think, The Sopranos. I think that sort of let television know that it was okay to do things this way. One, that we could root for a guy like that. Which enables us to root for, Bryan Cranston in Breaking Bad, and then enables us to root for Bob Odenkirk here, even though we don't understand why we're rooting for him. But also, to me, and the criticism existed then, great episodes of The Sopranos where you're like, that was just a lot of people sitting around talking, and most importantly, what we learned when they weren't talking.
Yeah, 6 feet under.
What they didn't. Of course, 6 feet under, but that flowed from The Sopranos too. I think.
And what's I think what's cool with AMC and also FX mentioning The Americans is that this thing where you'll suddenly have a 78-minute episode, you know, or an 80-minute episode, and so it doesn't have to be a thing where like, gotta make that 60.
Right.
Let's take out the glances.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah, and they, you know, there's sometimes we're doing 8- and 10-page dialogue scenes that don't have, and I love this. There is not a obvious arc of A to B to C as far as beginning, middle, and end, and that they're sort of winding paths, which I think make for real relationships depicted on screen, where you're flirting with your friend, and now it's, oh wow, it's a weird argument, and now it's sort of past history, and now we're trying to move on, and now I'm being strange, and now you're walking away. And they allow that, and then they also allow for a lot of discovery.
So is most of that work then done? Like talking to the director or talking to most for you with Bob Odenkirk, or are those decisions that you guys make together at that moment? How involved is the director? I assume the writer of the episode's there for that episode?
Yes.
How involved are they at that point?
They're all involved. I definitely think of our show as fully celebrating that this is supposed to be a collaborative art form at its best.
But at the end, I'm like, it seems like you'll explain what you just explained, but that you're given enormous latitude for how you then interpret what's not on the
Yes,
page.
I mean there's perimeters because their scripts. If you've ever gotten to read one of their scripts, they're written beautifully and a bit more novelistic than I'm used to. There's long passages of tone, narrative description. But less parenthetical acting, and for anybody that's read a script, they can be overloaded with stuff like she says surprised in parentheses, sarcastically,
gasping,
with anger. My favorite is as a tear rolls down her face. I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I can get to that on the word the. I'll do it. I'll see what we get. You know, and that's although some writer friends of mine have said we're writing that for networks. We have to write a performance in so they can understand what's going to be seen. Right. But at any rate, you don't feel hemmed in by it. Surprisingly, these long narrative tones, you understand. You hear the story like a literal soundtrack in your head when you read that sort of stuff. And then yes, there's a lot of freedom. Our cast rehearses the lines on our own over and over and over and over with each other, even if you're not in the scenes, when we're all down there in Albuquerque, just because we do it to the letter. There's no improvising and no ad-libbing on the show whatsoever. They will correct a well or an but it's phrasing that they meant, and it's slightly outside of realism. There's a slight poetry to some of the monologues people break into, and then it's like extreme naturalism in a conversation all of a sudden. And so we do it to the letter, so that then when you get there, it's a talk between your Melissa Bernstein or Nina Jack will be there as the voice of our showrunners if they're not there, Vince or Peter, this season Peter Gould, and then you have your director and your writer, and you discuss and you do multiple takes of every which way this scene could play.
Is that right?
Yeah.
All right, so these aren't directed by Clint Eastwood, like this is.
We do many takes to see like what's another way to interpret this scene, which is another reason why it's best to know your lines before you ever get there. You don't want to be the person that 13 of your 15 takes are about glitches.
Lines.
Yeah,
we just had as a guest, Billy Bob Thornton was a guest programmer on TCM, or I think a couple of weeks ago. And but we shot it like 3 months ago, so I'd forgotten. But one of the movies he picked was Man with the Golden Arm with Sinatra. And
I've never seen
and I was well, it's interesting and it's definitely worth seeing. And Kim Novak, but it was he talked a lot about Sinatra, and because Billy Bob Thornton's a musician also, and Sinatra as well. And Billy Bob thinks of himself as a musician first, but Sinatra was so unwilling to do those second, third, fourth, fifth takes.
Really?
He never. So, and I think that's, I'm guessing. I have no idea what I'm talking about, but I always thought that was his insecurity, that it was easy for, like, hey, let's do it once. The first is the best. It's the purest. And Brando would, when they were speaking, would argue that no, man, who knows what you have at take 8, let alone take 18. It might be something fantastic, but Sinatra, I feel like, was afraid of that he thought take 18 would be the same as take 1, and then he'd get exposed. He would get exposed.
For not being able to actually alter his performance.
That's right, yeah.
I think that happens sometimes with people that don't want to take direction. And I'm not speaking for any actor.
Well, he didn't.
Never said
That's
they
right.
want to take direction, but I think some of it is fear of exposure that you will actually not be able to alter it.
You can do one thing.
Yeah, you can do.
I would fear it. I mean, well, I'm not an actor, but I would fear it. Right.
It can be hard. It's mental gymnastics in the moment, but I love it. That's not to say it's better or worse. And I've worked with directors that just want to do 1 or 2 takes, and you need to know that first, and there's not going to be a lot of discussion, and there's something to be learned from that process. And I've learned from, there are also directors who go all the way the other way of like 40 takes till I break you down, and you want to kill yourself. We're going to get an emotional nugget.
Well, that was
when it's manipulative, I don't agree with it. When it's informative, it can be fun.
William Wyler, George Stevens, those guys would break you down, and then, but I mean, you know what, he had.
I'd love to be in a Mike Leigh film. What are they rehearsing for 6 months before they even film anything? I would love to do that.
Actually, Otto Preminger, who did Man with a Golden Arm, like to do
that.
Right.
Yeah, so there's something to be said for all of that.
Right.
But our process it seems to all coalesce exactly as it should be. The process we do for these scripts.
I'm curious, and you might not be the person to ask this because this might be a writer's room question, but this is a show that is a prequel, and so it ostensibly has a set endpoint.
Right.
Is there a feeling that guides the show in any way, or is it just sort of such a vague notion that it's this floating dot in the horizon that no one thinks about?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I've asked the writers. That is more of a writer's room question, but I ask them questions. Sometimes it's curiosity for my own character, but a lot of times just curiosity about their process. Even before it being a prequel situation where you have an endpoint that's fixed on Breaking Bad as well, I found it fascinating that they don't write a Bible for their show. The stuffed animal floating in the pool, they thought fell from the sky, but didn't know at that time that they said, we thought it would be from an airplane, but we weren't. Why does that matter? Who's flying that plane, and why does that connect to anything? And then wrote to get there, which to me is amazing.
The same with the gun in the trunk. I heard was the same deal.
The gun in the trunk. They were like, I don't know what we're going to do with that. They try not to paint themselves into a corner.
And most shows have a
full Bible, and most shows it's requested and/or demanded of them too. Right. So there's also some freedoms that Vince and Peter have gotten for themselves.
I guess my question is, do they know where Better Call Saul ends or not?
I don't know. I don't know for sure. They've talked about the fact that they would never want to be overly clever or dismissive of, because you could argue Saul was a con man. We don't have to make sure any of the things he said were true about himself or who he knew or who he didn't know. We can even pretend that scene where it looks like he already knew Gus Fring was false or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like they could do that, but they've already said they're not going to do that to their fans. They're not going to do that to the integrity of the show. But they've also made a situation where not only do they have a bending timeline going forward and back, so it isn't sort of like we've got an end point and then Breaking Bad has to start. You could be going past that. You could be going into
that's right. They have. I mean,
the Cinnabon stuff is clearly post Breaking Bad.
100%.
And so we know what happens. But we know what happens to Mike, and we know what happens to Gus, and now we know what happens to Charles.
Right.
We didn't.
And what does Stevia? I always forget her name.
Lydia.
She's
so great.
I can't. Does Lydia die? I can't remember.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
She's poisoned.
She gets poisoned with the stevia.
Right. That's right. Oh, jeez. Yeah. Poisoning has really happened twice. I mean, essentially because they're sort of anti-poisoning Hector in a sense.
And also the little kid with the plant substance.
Oh, right.
Yes. That's right.
True.
So I can't believe he actually did that.
I know.
Right, I know. And then we continued to root for him.
But then the second thing that alters having a set stone. Go ahead.
No, but we don't know your end. So you were.
We've theorized that you were like to me, at home.
Just work at Claire's Accessories next to cinema.
Right? No, maybe he comes back and he's putting stuff in, and then he's going to go up to the bedroom, and there you'll be.
It is. It's weird that you don't know.
It's possible, or so. And obviously, you're not going to tell us. And by the way, if you knew, I would want you to tell us. But like, so I love theorizing. Like, did you think this is crazy? This is not why I got into the law? Are you a lawyer in Asheville, North Carolina?
Right.
Have you settled down? You have a family. You have a small private practice.
Yeah.
Or did somebody shoot you in the head?
I was saying, is your death the thing that finally sent him around the bend?
Yeah.
You know?
It's possible. I mean, but the other thing for the characters they don't know the ending, they've written, which was sort of revolutionary at the time of Breaking Bad, is to do a series where your characters evolve as well. It's not just the situations they're in. So clearly, Jimmy to Saul is not the same person he's going to turn out to be. And you also see these other evolutions of Nacho and even Gus Fring not being who he turns out to be. My character as well is very different than the way we saw her in the beginning. So that kind of moving target makes it less clear to me to say if the Kim we met in the beginning of Better Call Saul, day 1 of season 1, met the Saul that's at the end of Breaking Bad, what would they think of each other is a different question to me than by the time we get there. I can't imagine it's a happy ending.
Doesn't well,
because part of me goes, even if she's there, the tragedy of what has eroded in this woman or been revealed about her that she would abide by him is equally sickening.
So it's hard to believe that she could have gone through Breaking Bad as a stay-at-home
accomplice
mom. That we didn't take, that's why.
Yeah, but is she more of an Edie Falco? Like, what is she doing?
But that abrupt moment of wait a minute, I can't do this again. I might kill somebody. I'm going to get 12 movies from Blockbuster. Could also be, I can't do this. I can't be part of this. I can't be around this scene. I'm moving to Asheville, and here's a note. I'm not talking to you about it. I'm super smart and capable, and I will start 100%. A life. I will start a life somewhere else, and I'm never going to call you again.
It's terrifying to be an actor.
We talked about.
Yeah, I could only be in one episode. We don't know.
We talked about the Michael McKean house destruction, but it reminded me of one of my favorite sequences that you did on this show. I believe it was season 2, the cold call montage.
Love that one with the post-its.
Yeah, like how fucking long did that take? That just seems like it would have been exhausting because it's so many quick cuts.
It should have taken 2 days. It took 1 day, and it was just me. I feel like we did 15 hours that day, and I had like a pit crew of people because it was 10 phone calls total with pocket dialogue. And for anybody that doesn't know, that's dialogue that most likely will not be heard on screen, but it has to be fully performed. And have your mouth make those actions so that Kelly Dixon edited that one brilliantly, so that they can take pieces and make the montages they make. So it was about 10 phone calls, and they wanted it to look like it took place over 5. I feel like it was between 4 and 6 days. I think it ended up being 5. So there's clothing that has to change. This woman doesn't have her own office anymore, so the places where she's doing these conferences, the post-its, so they would do all 10 phone calls kind of on loop in one outfit in one location. And then I would just get like stripped down, like Velcro, just ripped away and remiked and put in a different location and do the 10. And I wrote the other half of the conversation just to keep myself sane.
Oh, you wrote the other half of the conversation?
Just for myself. I wrote what everybody on the other line is saying. Because the way you speak to somebody you're cold calling that was your mom's friend in college is different than your old dentist. Versus, dude, there's clearly one in there where it's like some guy that I met at a law mixer who hits on me and I can't stand. So I just want to make sure they were all different.
That's and then of course you had a smaller variation of that this season.
Yes.
With calling the different repair companies so you could cancel. So it turns out, because there's the best actor in the history. This is a fact. It's not an opinion. This has been determined scientifically.
Okay, great.
The greatest actor on the phone in the history of the screen is Rob Redford, who is so.
That's real.
Oh, I was going to say Bob Newhart,
but okay. From the president's
Well, he's funny.
Bob Newhart should win for
but it's a couple,
right? Yes.
Bob Newhart was going to be a guest at the festival. I had a 20-minute conversation with him before Hell's for Heroes, a Don Siegel movie.
Oh, wow.
But Rickles died 3 days before the festival, and they were booked. So I lost. I mean, I'm like, yeah, it's about me. But I was really looking forward to talking to Bob. Totally.
I mean,
I'm so sorry.
I'll be okay. But being great on the phone, that's hard. That's a thing.
I find it bizarrely difficult, and every actor I know thinks the same thing.
Emma Stone's audition in La La Land.
Brilliant scene.
Great phone scene.
Yeah. Brilliant scene. Yes. Yeah. And phone calls are frequently audition scenes, which is also hard. Really? Yes. My audition for this was the phone call scene with Jimmy in bed that I think is episode 3 or 4 in season 1, where he wakes me up in the middle of the night and I'm telling him, don't use the robot sex voice. All of that. That was my audition.
So this obviously changed your life, right?
In what way?
I mean, different kinds of roles, different things, different level of exposure. I mean, the critical praise for this show is, all we do is, each week fawn over whether it was an A or an A+. That's basically how we handle our. That's how we handle. I think we may have thought one episode was an A- and we felt guilty about saying that. Or maybe it didn't. I would just presume that I'm friends with an actor who sort of has not succeeded as much as you have, but he's a recurring character on two pretty successful buzzy shows. And it like just changed the way he feels when he goes in for an audition. It changed the way other actors he thinks look at him, or it's certainly producers,
Have the muffin baskets gotten better?
I wouldn't want to say anything bad about all the work that I've done prior and the people that I've worked with. Sure. This show is critically acclaimed by people that are largely viewed as some of the best television story makers on. From the makers of a show that Breaking Bad that some people think is the best show ever, and now they talk about Better Call Saul in that arena. So
it is.
One thing that changed immediately is writers and showrunners come up to me wherever I am at any cocktail party. They're just they're fascinated by the making of our show, but there's also an immediate respect level for anybody that Vince and Peter have decided to include in that corral. So that's really wonderful. And certainly being seen in a drama. When I was doing theater, I did just as much drama as comedy, but once I did a sitcom here as the first TV show I got 12, 13 years ago, I mostly just got called in for comedies.
And you're here.
That has changed dramatic as well. Pun intended. Yeah. It's actually not a pun, just a recall, it's a repetition.
It's something. I'm sure there's a word for it.
Ironic, interesting. Let's just say that this drama, this breakthrough drama, is sort of two of your co-stars came up in comedy.
That's true.
They were sketch comedians, right?
Yeah.
Those guys must be Odenkirk and McKean, truly funny guys.
They are. They're both funny. They're both more intellectually dry-witted funny than you might think, because they both do such.
That's the best kind of funny.
It is. But a lot of people wonder.
America knows that's the best kind of funny.
I agree. Yeah. And we have a great time on set, but there are plenty of people that think that those two are just constantly doing bits.
Right.
And they're not.
Right.
That's not their deal.
Right.
No, I wouldn't, well, they've done some bits. Let me just say, there have been some bits, but not. They're not getting up doing a sketch kind of thing. It's just very dry, funny. But all of our writers are very dry and funny. I think it comes through in the show too.
It does.
I think it's one of the reasons they don't look at comedic actors. I couldn't get called in for a drama 99% of the time, no matter how much somebody liked my work, because they're like, well, she's a comedic actress, which was just confounding to me. And then I owe it to Sharon Bialy and Sherry Thomas and Russell Scott that cast Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul as well as many other award-winning shows, that they don't look at actors that way either. That's why I got called in.
Jonathan Banks also hilarious.
He is hilarious.
No,
he's an airplane.
He is.
Did you know that? No, totally. He's in the tower.
Yes.
He's in the tower and airplane.
He's so funny. Patrick Fabian is very funny.
He plays Howard.
Mark Margolis is funny in a very strange. He and God, none of our actors are very much like their characters, which is really fun. Patrick's nothing like Hamlin. Mark Margolis is nothing like Hector. Giancarlo Esposito, nothing like Gus Fring. Michael McKean is nothing like his character. Bob is really not like Saul, and certainly not like Jimmy. So it's fun.
So what do we think? Is this the moment? Because, well, first of all, so we've lost Michael McKean, right? We presume that's the. I mean, again,
show me a body, you know.
Right. Show me a body, right? That's you.
They did discuss showing bodies or not showing bodies.
This is a show that could be like 2 years later, and he's like just being wheeled out of the hospital, like still with the burns all over. Like,
or the show could be 2 years earlier. For some reason, we're just going to reinvestigate what that life was.
Yeah, back to the mailroom.
No,
that's true.
Yeah, whether he's actually going to appear on screen, I think is very much.
That's right. That's different. That's different than whether he died at that moment. I took that as a clear death. But you're right. When there's no body, nothing's clear. That's how that works.
Yeah, I don't think of them as people that, them meaning Peter and Vince, as people that like do some false cliffhanger thing. Michael McKean certainly has said that his character is dead.
Yeah, on Twitter, it seemed that that's what he was.
Okay, I try not to.
Like it's been a great run,
so I didn't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Right, which would still, of course.
I should say, as far as life change, yes. I feel badly that it's. I don't want to ever look like I'm not grateful. No. If anything, I'm just embarrassed.
No.
I'm just. People have been. Lovely doing this caliber of work and being allowed to play in the sandbox with these people, and then having the character change too. They weren't really sure who Kim would be, and now she's a significant part of that universe. Has been life changing.
So yes. we pretty much got to go, I guess. But would does the fact that there's no Bible mean you don't have any idea what happens to Kim?
I don't. It makes it very easy to not spill the beans. Right. I really don't know. Yeah.
Do you know at the beginning of the season how the season's going to end, or even that is?
Not at all. Even the thing I said earlier when I was like, oh, well, the 5-minute nap, that kind of editing shows you this loss of time. Like I at that time I didn't know there was an accident.
Interesting.
God, that accident was cool.
Wow.
It's good. You play in the moment.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
All right. Rhea Seehorn, this is, when you find out what happens with nominations, when do those happen?
Did you do your voting? The Television Academy, anybody that's a Television Academy?
We're not.
I'm in a thing that doesn't matter.
Losers.
You realize you just have to have been in the business for like 6 years and pay $100. This is just to be part of the nomination process.
I've been in the business for 6 years, hence I do not have $100.
That's a very good point. Yeah. I acted literally like I'd been called before Congress, even though it's like 2,000 people.
For your consideration.
And I was like, I clearly picked this. And then I think nominations. So that process goes on for a while. I think nominations are announced, but they were announced in July last year, and I think they hold to that.
It had to be soon because the billboards are up.
Yeah, I think it's July.
All over town. You are part of this amazing, I don't know if it's a renaissance because that suggests that it happened before, but this
a wave
of really finally high quality, complicated roles for women on television, and again, in this show of really fine actors, yours, it just seems to me in particular, stands out in a show of great actors.
Thank you so much. I hope other people get from that, other writers, that it actually just makes your male characters more interesting if they're surrounded by interesting women. It doesn't take away, it adds.
That's right, that's right. All right, Rhea Seehorn, thanks very much.
Thank you for having me.
So again, we liked episode 10. And the show and everything. So
did it get an A+?
Again, I made that great. We give everything an A+, right? We do the show. We review the show because we love the show. Not
awesome.
Join us for season 4. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.